Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about a concept that I don't necessarily suggest that you do, but it's something that people can do, and I've seen examples of this, and that is the idea that could a person come in and essentially just do their max effort work and their dynamic effort work and leave and still get stronger and make gains? And I think the answer here is yes, although it's going to give you some muscle imbalances. You're not going to be the biggest and strongest you could be, but you'll definitely have very good strength to weight ratios, meaning someone who did this stuff could get, when we talk about size versus strength, it would probably maximize that to some extent. Of course, keeping in mind hypertrophy is always our limit. But if a person was chasing relative strength and didn't want to get just massive, it would work. Although I've seen guys get big doing minimal stuff, and that's kind of where genetics and individual tolerances come in. And I'll talk about that a little further in with one of my clients. But this is something I recall when I used to discuss conjugate stuff a few years back on my channel. Someone had chimed in and they're like, I don't do any accessory work. They're like, I just come in and do the max work. I do the dynamic effort work on the 4 days and I just go home. Like I occasionally play around with some accessories, but there's a lot of days I just come in and ramp to a deadlift variation on the max day and go home. Or do the speed benching and just go home. And they're like, that's normal, like the majority of my workouts. They're like, unless I just feel like coming in and doing some other stuff. They're like, in which case I do, and I make pretty good gains. And the person had mentioned kind of what they were lifting. They kind of hit most of my strength standards I had put out for the big five, not necessarily the chin ups and stuff, but at least the squat, bench, and deadlift. They had reached those, which I thought was interesting. And I've also seen Dave Tate a couple times in different podcasts or seminars over the years say that he's seen guys. There were some guys even, at Westside who did that. And they just didn't want to do all the supplemental work. And they came in and more or less just did the max work, the dynamic effort work, put 100% effort into it, and they left. He's like, and they were still strong. So it's kind of funny that occurs. Now, I would say that for most people, you are leaving quite a bit on the table, but could it work? Yeah, it could work. And I would say the closest that I have personally seen with one of my lifters, I had a lifter who didn't have a lot of gym time. Okay, his relationship life, his work, everything else kept him, busy. He just didn't have a lot of time. So he was just like, look, I need my workouts like 45 minutes and I need to be back out of the gym, 30 minutes. And, when we looked at what his weak points were, his weak points tended to be hamstrings, upper back, triceps. So what we ended up devising, he would come in and he would do max work and speed work on his upper days, right? And after he would do whichever one it was, we just did tricep work and rows. That's it. Now, did some of his tricep work include close grip benching? Yeah, usually. So I always had him after the max or the speed work. We either did close grip benching, which we did for a while, or we would floor press. And then he would do tricep work of some type, some sort of single joint movement, some rows, and go home. All right. And we didn't do a lot of sets. I mean, it was like 3 sets each. And he would just go home. Lower body days, we would, max on a squat or a deadlift, or occasionally a good morning for him. And he was doing this stuff in a box gym. He would hook bands up sometimes, for the speed work. But he'd come in, he'd hit his max, or he'd do his speed boxes and his speed pulls. We never even messed with sumo because hips didn't like it. So we just did conventional pulls for speed pulls, conventional for variations. We did a lot of deficit work. He did mostly box squats, pen squats. He didn't have specialty bars. Occasionally we could put mini bands over them. He'd do back squats. All right. And then what would we do? He would do good mornings and rows. He did good mornings and rows. That's it. Occasionally, if he had some time, we threw in some abs or some hamstring curls or something. All right, every now and then I'd let him do say, well, if you have time left over, do those. And, so he pretty frequently did some hamstring curls. But that was, at most what he did would be rows, good mornings, and then maybe some hamstring curls. So at most 3 exercises, and he would leave. So what did his lifts look like? Well, I took him from, I want to say about a 280 bench up to a 325 bench. The guy could straight up pause bench 325. Okay, his triceps were always his limit. He had a big chest. He was a thick guy. He was, at a slightly higher body fat. He wasn't lean. He was walking around about 230. He didn't care about cutting. He's like, I have a little bit of a power belly. My girl likes it. I don't care. And he was content with that. We broke a 500 squat. I think we got him up to around that 510 range, maybe even like 525. But it was in the very low 500s. But I remember us breaking a 500 squat, literally only doing MEDE work and then the good mornings and rows. We didn't do any extra quad work for him. He didn't seem to need it. Deadlifts, like mid 500s. Right? He was a mid 500s deadlifter. He could definitely do 500 on a deficit. Right? Even standing on a standard iron plate, I recall him doing, 500 pounds easily, like on a 2-inch plate. And I remember, I think his deadlift ended up around 550. Now, I only coached him for about 7 or 8 months. And this was over 2 years ago, right? He dropped out about 2 years ago. But that's where we got him to. So these were workouts that he was usually done in 30 minutes. All right. At home, I had him just do band press downs and stuff because he needed it for the elbow health. We had some elbow tendonitis. So he just had some mini bands and he'd do press downs at home. And we got him up to those sort of numbers. All right. Got him to those sort of numbers. No drugs. Again, bigger guy. But you guys get the idea. I mean, so the question becomes, do we always need all the accessory work? Well, no, we don't always need it. It's a good idea to do it. I could also look at that and say, would he have benched 10 pounds more had he done more accessory work? Would he have gotten to a 600 deadlift with more accessory work? Okay. We see where we're going here. But, by anyone's standards, 325 bench, 500 squat, 550 deadlift for a recreational lifter who didn't compete, who just liked being strong. He was a big burly guy with a massive beard who liked to be strong and throw around some heavy weight. And it worked. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.